Hello, how are you doing? My name is Diego and I'm here to talk about this episode of Diversilíngua. We talked with Kayla Belush, an American girl who considers herself as a world citizen. Yeah, she has a project called English Without Borders where she teaches people English for free in a Facebook group. Yeah, it was amazing to talk with her. We talked about some cultural difference between the United States and Spain, where she lives right now. And also we mentioned a little bit about our culture, the Brazilian culture. It was an amazing conversation and I hope you liked this episode. And don't forget to subscribe in our channel and to give us a thumbs up. And if you have any suggestion, please let us know. See you next time. Hello, my dear friends. This is Diego with Diversilíngua, with one more episode for Diversilíngua. And I'm here with Renata. Hello, Renata. How are you doing?
Hi, Diego. I'm doing fine. And you?
I'm doing great. And today we have a special guest to talk about teaching English and also to talk about languages and stuff. I think that Renata can present Kayla better than me.
Okay. Kayla Belush is an American and she has a bachelor's degree in Spanish and International Development Studies, as well as a master's degree in International Development for Corporation. Her opportunities abroad have taught her so much, so she has decided to document her experiences on her website. She provides information and support for those who are facing difficulties in living abroad. She wrote on her website, I believe that traveling, language learning, and awareness of cultural disparities around the world help us to better understand each other as human beings. She identifies herself as a global citizen. She also has a project called English Without Borders, in which she teaches people for free on Facebook. For everything we said, we thankfully present Kayla Belush. I think she has the same profile as she showed. Well, that's this show. Okay, Kayla, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about how you've become enthusiastic about language learning?
Yes, of course. First of all, I want to say thank you for the beautiful presentation, the introduction that you guys just gave me. I'm really excited to be here and chatting with both you, Renata, and Diego today. My enthusiasm for language learning is something that I believe I've had since I was a child. I was very interested in learning Spanish my whole life, and I never had an opportunity to actually take classes in Spanish until I was about 16 in high school. I'm originally from New York. So it was, in the US, sometimes we take our language classes a bit later in life. So you're already in high school and you take a basic class on language. And I really loved it. And so I wanted to keep going. And when I had the opportunity to go to college, I knew that the only thing that I wouldn't regret studying at that time was Spanish. So the more I started getting involved in language and finding opportunities to travel and go around the world, it sort of it opened up a lot of doors for me and different opportunities that were really unexpected, but that have completely changed me as a person and my identity. So that made me even more enthusiastic about language learning. So now I've decided to go on and learn other languages as well.
And how was your experience back in high school? Because we had already interviewed a New Yorker before, but as she had studied Latin, she couldn't explain pretty much how are the language classes in high school, because you can choose, right?
Yeah. Normally, and at my high school, I went to a couple different high schools. So I had my first 2 years, I was in one state, and then I finished high school in New York. And but where I graduated from, we had three options for language classes. There was Spanish, French, or Latin. So the Latin classes were mainly, working on grammar and focusing on language structure and that sort of thing, learning roots of different words. So that was a different sort of language learning experience. But then normally the options you have are French or Spanish. But if you are in the southern US, normally it's only Spanish. Would be the only option because it's much more common to find Spanish speakers in the southern United States. So yeah, that experience was, people talk about high school language classes like a joke, because most of the time they are. It depends on the school that you go to and the kind of teacher you have, of course. A different teacher can totally change your perspective on language learning. But for me, the teacher I had for my last couple of years of high school was, I didn't see her confident in the language. She never spoke the language in class. They were just sort of like activities that we did, written down. We would watch movies sometimes, but it was never very interactive. But I always wanted more, which is why I decided to keep going once I finished those classes.
Yeah, I think that
it's
in
not
Brazil,
that great.
Yeah, in Brazil,
Yeah,
I think
it's
almost the same.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Yeah, it's just the same. Sometimes some language teachers, they don't know how to speak the foreign language. They just know grammar. They know how to read, but they don't know how to speak. But wow.
Yeah. So it gives them something to teach. Obviously, they were imparting information to me that I didn't know, which was good. But there's this whole mental and emotional side to language learning that's so much more important. That mindset part that they weren't able to share with us, which I think makes a lot of people sort of not realize the potential that learning another language has for you, because no one shows them how cool it can be. No one gives them that, positivity or that excitement about the language. So they don't feel the need to even try.
Yeah,
sure.
I see. And in your opinion, Kayla, what are the advantages of studying language for you? What kind of method did you use to learn the language you know?
For me, the advantages of studying language and languages they're never ending. There's always another advantage, I find. But more than anything, I find that the relationships I've been able to make with people from around the world, the friendships, to feel like I genuinely have family around the world, that's the most incredible sensation for me. And it makes me feel really grateful for the fact that, I am where I am today. And I wouldn't live where I live. I wouldn't be in the relationships I'm in if it weren't for having studied languages. And so the method I use for my language learning is really focusing on those real relationships with people, finding those genuine friendships or genuine relationships, those emotional connections with people, so that when you are forcing yourself, at first, when it's difficult to speak in your second language or third language or whatever, you don't want to feel uncomfortable. You want to feel like it's someone that you can trust and that will help you along the way. It needs to be like a safe space for you. So I love working on finding those friendships with people that I feel I'm very compatible with, and emotionally creating those connections between the language and doing things I love. So the kind of books that I already love to read, reading them, but in my second or third language. The kinds of music that I like. Okay, how can I find that style of music in another language? The same thing with movies or pop culture that you see online. I try to do things that I already love in that language, because that helps reinforce that emotional positive connection that you have with it mentally.
Yeah, I see. How many languages do you speak?
So fluently, I only have English and Spanish, but I am learning Basque as well, which is a regional language from the northeastern Basque country region of Spain. It's totally different than any other language I've ever seen. So it's taking me longer to learn it than Spanish did, but I'm getting there little by little. So, and then I have a bit of French as well, but I'm not very confident in that either.
Yeah.
Great. And what was the best tip that you've already got about language acquisition?
So for me, definitely the professors that I've had throughout my language learning experience once I went to college, they totally changed my mindset on what it meant to learn a language. And I think that was like what revolutionized my my capacity to move forward and accelerate much quicker in my language learning process. I took a phonetics and phonology class in Spanish to learn how to better my my Spanish accent, how to sound more native, how to sound more natural. And that was really interesting to me because I wanted to sound as native as possible, just because it was a personal goal of mine. And on the very first day of class, my professor, Profesora Escudero, if she ever listens to this podcast, shout out to you. One of the first things she said that really stuck with me is she started by explaining to us that language is not something that we possess. It's not something that's mine or yours. And just because she was a native speaker of Spanish didn't mean that that was any more her language than it was mine. It's something that's ours. It's something that belongs to us as human beings, and it's something to be shared between us rather than possessed among us. And so
that's so true.
Yeah, it was like the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And I was like, oh God, she's going to bring tears to my eyes the very first class. And that statement itself just changed my entire mindset regarding language learning from there on out.
Yeah, and it's fun how we the conception we have about language, or some people about right and wrong. You know, sometimes they have like 2-3 languages, but they don't understand that. You know, they understand more in a foreign language that there's the formal and the informal way of speaking about something, but in their own language they still with this misconcept about language. No, if you talk like this, you're wrong, but if you talk like this, you're right. And wow, this is beautiful what I've just learned here now. And yeah.
In my case, I had some struggles. I had some struggle with English because sometimes I had a strong Brazilian accent, you know, and then, but once I think that I've been noticed that it doesn't matter if you have a little accent, you know, because I think that is better communication than perfection.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then I started to not being so mad with my accent, you know.
It's part of identity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Part of who you are. So, you know, there's no right and wrong about accent.
Exactly. And even us, you know, as native speakers, we all have different accents too. Someone from Scotland doesn't speak like someone from Florida or someone from New York. So it's that's something that I talk about a lot when I work as an accent coach as well, helping people that want to work on their accents because it's a personal choice of theirs. And the first thing I say in that first class with my private students is that this is a choice that they're making. You know, as long as their pronunciation is good, as long as the clarity is there, just like you just mentioned, Diego, as long as the clarity is there, there's no reason to change your accent. It's a personal choice that if you want to do it for this reason or that reason, that's okay. I've done it myself in Spanish, so I understand their motivations for wanting to do so. But your accent is never anything to be ashamed of. It's just like you said, Renata, it's part of your identity. It's who you are. And when I sound frustrated or angry or sad in Spanish and I start to think about other things and my accent comes out a little bit and a word comes out and I'm like, ooh, that was really American. That used to make me really mad. And I'd be like, oh, I just gave myself away. People know I'm not native now. But at the end of the day, like, I'm American, like, and that's okay. Like, I like being American. It's who I am. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sure. But sometimes, unfortunately, socially speaking, you're marked as, you know, oh, you're the Brazilian, you are, I don't know, the Mexican, you are the whatever.
Yeah.
If you don't speak, when you speak with accent, or sometimes some sentences, you know, some forms that maybe an English person or an American person would use.
And once I watched a video from a girl from Peru who lives here in Brazil. She has a channel called A Llama Carioca. Es como she, oh my gosh, I started to speak in Spanish.
You're mixing languages, you're trilingual.
Yeah, but in fact, she made that channel to talk a little bit about her life here in Brazil because she was born in Peru, but she came to Brazil, I think, since she was 8 years old, I think. And then she talked in one of her videos that she decided to change her accent completely because she had been facing some problems in order to find a job here in Brazil. Actually, she could find a job in Brazil, but sometimes she thought that people didn't respect her properly because she had a strong accent, a strong Spanish accent. And then
Yeah.
she decided uh, to get rid of her Spanish accent.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are some occasions that, yeah, you should try to speak as as good as you can, you know. But yeah, it's interesting to see a point of view of a person who who faced some situations that it was a little bit complicated for her to continue with a strong Spanish accent, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the hard things that we have to come to terms with as language learners is the fact that that unfair discrimination
Mm-hmm.
in the world of language does exist when it
Yeah,
comes to
yeah.
accents. And the more that we talk about it and help people feel proud of their accents and recognize that, you know, there's no right or wrong when it comes to your identity and the way you speak. The more we talk about that, the more we normalize that accents are a beautiful thing. And that's one reason why I was so excited when you guys reached out to me to do this podcast. I'm like, yes, like more people we can like reach and talk to about
Yeah,
this. And I like to call that like a type of linguistic activism. You
yeah.
know, it's like it's a different sort of activism, but it's really necessary right now in the world.
Yeah,
It is.
once we talked with a girl from the Netherlands, and she decided to record the episode entirely in Portuguese.
Ah,
And
nice.
she had a strong accent in Portuguese, but she could understand us, and she could answer most of our questions.
That's
And it
awesome
was
for her.
amazing. For her, it was like a proof that she can uh, get out of the comfort zone, you know.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about your project, right? English Without Borders. Which are the main objectives of that project?
Yeah, so English Without Borders is a sort of a project that I created with a business partner of mine. His name is Edward Hardy, and he's back from the States, from Florida. And so we got in touch during quarantine, just talking about our similar likes and beliefs and thoughts about the world. And we just wanted to do something to help the world and to make a positive impact. And so we had this idea of English Without Borders, which creates the main objective of creating, our long-term vision, our long-term goal is to create quality English education possibilities and opportunities for anyone with internet access. Because, you know, the world of language learning is so, it's very monetized, which is fine. You know, people have their businesses regarding it. People pay me as an English teacher. That's okay. It's how people make money. But at the same time, there's a lot of, academies out there that, and I've seen it here in Spain, where I've been teaching this past year, people paying incredible amounts of money for not that great of English instruction. And I've heard horror stories of other people going to academies or learning in schools where they were actually put down, or they were humiliated, or they felt embarrassed about the way they spoke. And that's the opposite of what a language learning experience should be, in my point of view. So we want more than anything for people to understand what fluency means to them, understand how to feel more confident, to feel comfortable in their skin, to feel happy communicating in their second language, in this case, English. And so we provide free classes 3 times a week for people all around the world to just join in on a Zoom call with us. And we talk more than anything about spoken English or cultural things or pronunciation, stuff that I've personally never seen when I've taught English and I'm using textbooks. I've never seen once any of these topics talked about. And it's what's most important for people to have that sense of confidence. So that's what we're going for. We want to tear down barriers and tear down borders and make language something that unites us rather than something that divides us.
Mm-hmm. And what
Amazing.
you have learned from this project so far?
I've learned a lot through the experience. We've been doing it since June, so it really is it's like in its baby stages still, but I can see that it's starting to grow and sort of jump into its next phase. It's sort of maturing. But I think more than anything, I've just learned that people are even more beautiful than you think they are. Like I was really nervous about jumping on calls with random people every, 3 times a week from all over the world. I didn't know how they would react, if people would be mean to each other, if people would be critical of other people's levels of English, because people join and have all sorts of English levels. And what I've realized is that people are just so kind in general and supportive of each other and building each other up and helping them feel confident. And I've seen people create relationships with one another through these classes and support each other in their language learning process. And I'm like, this is so beautiful. And it's just because they had the means or the method to do it. But if no one else gives them that channel or that sort of way of expressing themselves, or no one promotes that sort of learning, then of course we don't bring out the best parts of themselves. So I'm seeing the best parts of other people and learning a lot about other cultures, people from other parts of the world. They're always sharing little bits about themselves, what it was like for them growing up, their experience with language learning or life in general. And it helps me learn how to teach better, people from different backgrounds, what their typical problems or struggles might be. And it helps me communicate better on both a professional and a personal level. Like I just feel more comfortable connecting with people all over the world. And it just makes me feel very, very comfortable in my own skin, talking to anyone. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I've already watched some of your lessons, and I could see that there are some people that they are always there.
Yes, we have some like people that from day one have been in every lesson, and they're like religiously attending our English Without Borders classes, which is really great. And I see them evolve and grow as students, which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
And let's move to the topic of living abroad. Where do you live now?
Right now, I live in Spain, and I am in the northeastern region called the Basque Country. So I'm in a coastal city called Bilbao. That's where I am at the moment.
I've heard about it. And tell us about your experience. What were the main difficulties that you faced when you moved to a different country?
I think once I moved here more with a permanent mindset, not just, I'm here for a couple months and then I'll go home. Once I was here for a longer amount of time, I think the hardest thing for me was feeling isolated in the beginning. Because once I was out of a student atmosphere and I was just where, it was like working life and I was just, another part of society. I didn't have family friends here. I didn't have friends from my whole life that I could just reach out to or call up or meet up with. And that was really hard for me. Once I was out of the university atmosphere, there weren't always young people just wanting to hang out just because. And that was really difficult for me to come to terms with. So I had to learn how to come out of my shell a bit and talk to people. I wasn't very confident in introducing myself to new people, or I didn't think people would want to talk to me. And the more that I, forced myself to, okay, I'll join a group of language learners here in Bilbao and see if someone wants to meet up, or a group of expats, or just like a forum of Spanish speakers that, just young people that also are feeling the same way. Everyone feel these same sorts of sensations and we can relate to it. So the more I talk to other people about it, I'm like, I'm not the only one. Other people feel this way too. And that helped me get more confident. But it's definitely a struggle, I think, at the beginning, that feeling of, you're the only one of your kind, I guess you could say. We like feeling like there's people that are similar to us around us. So when I was the only American and there weren't other people around me that could relate to my cultural background or my perspective, mentally, my ideas or how I perceived the world, that was hard. And I had to adapt to that and sort of find a mixture in, okay, how can I take the best parts of my Spanish identity and mix them with my American identity and create this new and improved version of Kayla Belush. So,
and talk about this. How about the cultural part? How was it for you, and what you like most about the Spanish culture?
I love the Spanish culture and the fact that it's so warm and open and welcoming. And like being introduced into a Spanish family, my boyfriend is Spanish, so meeting his family, I remember I was so nervous because I was thinking about, what that means in America to like meet the parents and meet the like the sister-in-law, or these different people, or they're characters, in someone else's life, that it's really intimidating. And I was like, oh, they're going to drill me with questions about who I am, why I'm here. And it was just like, they immediately accepted me as one of them, no questions asked. I love that people are always just like hugging and kissing each other. Now COVID obviously has sort of taken that part away of culture a little bit, if you're not within, close friend groups or close family groups. But I just love how open they are. And they're very loud in a sense that they're not afraid to share their opinion. They're very assertive with how they feel, and they don't apologize for it. And I feel like in America, oftentimes we're always afraid of offending someone, and we don't want to say the wrong thing or step on anyone's toes. But here they just say what they think and why they think it, and they don't have to apologize. And I think I like that. I like that a lot, and I've adapted that a bit into my Spanish personality. But yeah, they're just very open and welcoming. There's always music and wine and food, always so much good food. So they're just a really kind people.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
It's pretty same the Brazilian culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we have sort of both things. We are afraid of offending people, so we don't criticize directly. We don't say negative things about people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we are loud. We have music.
Yeah. It's a kind of mixed.
Yeah.
And what were the countries that you've already visited, Kayla, and that you liked the most?
Mm-hmm. Well, besides Spain, because I obviously love Spain because I stayed here, but I also I've been in Latin America to Ecuador, Colombia, and Bolivia. And I love them so much. I loved Latin America because it number one, it helped reinforce my love of Spanish when I was still in those early learning stages. And again, I saw that same culture of people just being very warm and welcoming and always wanting to learn more about you and willing to talk to you. I was never afraid to be myself. And there's so much culture, especially in Latin America, with all of the indigenous history that there is there of, native peoples, that it was just really incredible to see how all of those parts of indigenous culture mix into the day-to-day life of people, based on where you are, especially in Bolivia. I saw a lot of that rich culture going from one city to another. And in Quito, when I was in Ecuador, I saw that as well. And in Colombia, I saw just so much history, like just a lot of history of so many years of creating this sort of like cultural differences or new cultural identities that in America, in comparison, is very young. So we don't have that same like really long history of, this comes from the Mayan way of thinking, or this comes from the Quechua way of thinking. It's something that's different. So for me, seeing that long history of indigenous culture and how it still impacts people today and the way they live and think and the stories they tell, the music they listen to, the food they eat, I think it's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And what about the food?
The food, in Bolivia, actually, when I was in Cochabamba, apparently that region has a love for spicy food. Mm-hmm. Spicy food is kind of hard for me. Like, I like the taste, but then I suffer.
For me as also. Here in Brazil, we have a state called Bahia, where the food is... I think that most of foods there, they are spicy.
Sure.
Yeah. Like, I like the taste, but then 1 second later, I'm just like in pure like suffering because I'm really sensitive to that. But apart from that, I loved the different, because the spices were different. I ate things like, I tried cow's tongue and guinea pig when I was in Ecuador, just to try it. So that was interesting. But
Did
I love
you
like the
try
different
guinea
fruits.
pig?
I did. I did
Oh
try
my
guinea pig.
gosh, I think that I couldn't because I think they are so cute.
Yeah, they are so cute. I don't think I fully knew what anything was at that point when I was ordering on the menu, and then I later
Okay.
sort of found out. But I think I might have tried it anyways, just
Mhm.
to see, to have the experience.
Okay.
But in Latin America in general, you guys have so many different kinds of fruit that in
Mhm.
America I had never eaten before, that I was like, I just wanted to be drinking different fruit juices every day. I just loved fruit. I just wanted to keep eating all the fruit.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, you talked about the food and uh, what uh, what are the most interesting? Yeah, the food. Can you tell us about what are you doing in the benefit of language learning? Yeah, you've already told us about your project of English without borders. But do you have any other projects in benefits of language learning?
Yeah, so within the English Without Borders group, I found a need of other people that wanted something a bit more personalized. They wanted, some sort of small group classes. So I did create a small group class as well, that is for accent reduction. So that's where we specifically work on the mindset regarding accent reduction. We work
Mm-hmm.
on pronunciation with individual sounds, vowels, and consonants. We work on the intonality, the intonation of the language, and how the rhythm and the stress sort of change the way we speak to feel more natural, to feel more relaxed, and reduced and connected speech. We talk about that as well. And then apart from that, I do individual accent coaching with people who want something just very personalized. But besides that, the majority of what we do is all for free, just right there on the English Without Borders group, and we share it on our YouTube channel as well.
Mm-hmm.
Videos every weekend that I put
Do,
up
do you
that
have
are
a
talking
YouTube
about different
channel?
things. Yes. So we
Okay.
we have a YouTube channel that is also under the name English Without Borders.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find there a lot of different videos with, quick tips or recommendations on, how to communicate better, or we talk about some cultural things sometimes. And we even have some recordings of interviews, quick interviews there with other people from around the world who have learned English,
Mm-hmm.
that now feel very confident in it and wanted to share their story and how they got to where they are, to sort of relate to other English learners. So yeah, there's a lot of really good info on there.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Renata?
Some people say that Americans in general are not into learning languages. What's your opinion about it?
I think that most of us, and I say this a lot to my students when they're worried about their accents, most of us, when we hear that someone has another language, we think it's really, really cool. Like, I remember my entire life being very jealous of people that grew up with a second language. I'm like, why couldn't I have grown up with a second language? Now I feel like I have a different perspective on learning languages because I did it as an adult. So I'm grateful for how my experience was. But now that I tell people that I speak Spanish, they think that's really cool. They're like, oh, you actually learned it. Like, but can you actually speak it? It's like, yeah. And they're like, but you speak it every day. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, whoa. And that just like blows their mind, because there are a lot of multicultural or multi-ethnic families in the United States that do grow up in those atmospheres. But there are a lot of people who are just consider themselves maybe like a white American. Maybe they don't remember, or they don't know where their culture comes from now. They don't know what countries their ancestors were from. And so they lost that identity. Yeah. And so they just feel like American, which we have that strong identity, but linguistically, there's no other connection with anything else. So when they hear that someone else has a language, they think that's really cool. And I don't think it's that we're not into or that we don't like learning languages. I think that we just don't know how. Like I mentioned before, we have, in high school is normally when you start a language learning process, and it's only for 1 year normally that's required. It depends on the state you live in, but normally it's just like 1 year, 2 years that you have to take it, and it's very basic. And after that, you never need it again. So because you conduct everything in English,
Mm-hmm.
and there's not much of an emphasis on it when you're younger, it's just you don't know how. So even when you do want to learn a language, you don't know where to go or where to look for it because no one ever taught you, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
So once I jumped into the world of teaching online, I think is when I actually realized how much there was out there that I never even realized when I was learning. So I think it's just sort of helping, having these conversations with other people and with other
Mm-hmm.
Americans and explaining how we learned languages. You guys have been through it too. And
Mm-hmm.
most of them will say like, oh, I'm jealous. Like, I wish I grew up with a second language. So I think most Americans would say if they could know another language, they would
Mm-hmm.
definitely want to.
Yeah,
But
so
have you ever experienced the plurality of languages in the US? Like, oh, I've already knew Mexican or
yeah, because
Chinese
there
or
are so many languages in
before.
the US.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when
sure.
I when
And there's no official language actually, right?
What
And
is
and you
the
and depending on the place, you hear a lot of Spanish or English or other languages.
Yeah, like officially our language is English, but we are the melting
Mm-hmm.
pot of the world, and we
Mhm.
describe ourselves as that. So based on where you go and the different immigrant communities that may have, immigrated there throughout the past decades or centuries, you can hear a lot of that in maybe the accents that people have, or the languages they speak. And if you go to New York City, for example, probably half of the people that you talk to on the street or half the things you hear will be in Spanish. It's the same in a lot of regions in the southern U.S., like in Florida, for example. There are a lot of Spanish speakers. But I have seen from my specific region of New York, I'm from an area that's near Syracuse. So it's sort of like if you look at the state of New York on a map and you put your finger right in the middle, I'm from that central New York area. And we have a lot of Italian Americans that have
Mhm.
immigrated there. And so those people that went to school with me that were Italian Americans, they really identify with their Italian culture. And you see them as like really Italian. They have that other like sort of way about them. We're like, ooh, don't mess with them. Like they're Italian. Like they're
They talk with their hands.
yes, yes. Like Spanish people too. It's a different kind of communication. And so those families, I did see how when they were amongst themselves or when they were at home, they would always be speaking in their second language or their first language, actually, in that case, in Italian. But then when they were in other social situations, they would speak in English. So there is a lot of plurality. It just depends on where you live and the sort of communities that are around you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that you started your project during the quarantine. Because
Mm-hmm.
we, from the Diversilíngua, we also started our project during the quarantine. Yeah.
Ah, I love it. We both took advantage
Sure.
of the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah. I've
Yeah, that's
always
right.
had that dream to start a podcast. And then during the quarantine, we together, me, Renata, Andresa, and Emilio, we decided to create this podcast because it could be an opportunity to meet people throughout the world to talk about language. One thing that we both love, me, Renata, and the others, and also it is also an opportunity to practice our language skills. This is our third episode totally held in English, but we've already had an episode that I tried a little bit of French, and
Oh,
maybe we are going to have other episodes in Spanish and French, because I think that those are the language that most of us, the hosts of these podcasts, can speak.
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to try out some Spanish.
That'd be great. We could always practice Spanish together as well.
Good.
Good,
Like
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome though that you guys took advantage of quarantine as well to do something to help motivate other learners, because
Yeah.
just looking through, the different topics that you guys have on the podcast and the sort of things you talk about, I can't understand everything when I listen to it in Portuguese, but I can pick up quite a bit just from that Spanish base as well, especially if I read what the topics are. I'm like, oh, I know what that is.
Oh, that's one of my curiosities, because as you know Spanish, I was curious if you can understand some Portuguese.
Yeah, because what I found is that it's easier for us to understand Spanish speakers than
The other way around, you mean?
The other way around, yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, and the Brazilian accent is one that I'm not as accustomed to. So I'm not sure if I would understand as much, but I know when I've gone to like lectures, when I was doing my master's here in Spain last year, I went to a few lectures that were completely held in Portuguese. I didn't know that when I went to them. I thought they were in Spanish, but I went and then I was like, okay, I'm here in this like conference for 4 hours in Portuguese. So I just have to like sit here and try and figure out what's going on. And I'd say I understood about like a 70% of what was happening based on, you know, those commonalities and all of the cognates I could find because they're both Latin-based languages. So yeah, there's quite a bit I can pick up, but to speak it, I don't know any Portuguese at all.
Yeah, I've heard about a lot of stories about people who started to learn Portuguese, and the first thing they say is that they started through Spanish.
Yeah,
really? That's really interesting.
Some Americans. There is a famous American on YouTube. His name is Gavin. Gavin. I don't know the other name. I know that his name is Gavin, and he has a channel called Small Advantages. And he started to record videos trying to teach people English in Portuguese, because he was learning Portuguese. I think that it was because of his work or something, and he already had he already knew Spanish, you know, and then he decided to move to Portuguese. And he thought, oh, I can teach people Portuguese online. And nowadays, I think that he's the most famous American teacher on YouTube, Brazil, you know?
Oh, wow, that's really cool.
Gavin Roy, I think his name.
Yeah, he relates a lot to our culture, and I think he could identify some of our most common mistakes in English. So I think that catches us.
There are a lot of commonalities for sure. I know my boyfriend, one day we went to Portugal together, and I watched him have a full-on conversation between like him and these Portuguese guys on the street, because they'd given us a ticket. We had a ticket on our car because we parked somewhere where apparently we weren't allowed to. And so he was trying to ask these people what he should do about this ticket. He's like, I'm in another country. Like, where do I pay it? Like, what do I do? So he just sat there and had a full-on conversation with them in Portuguese, like him speaking in Spanish, them responding in Portuguese, back and forth. And they just understood each other. And then everyone was like, oh, thanks. See ya. Have a good day. And went home. And I was like, whoa, that was really cool. And he's like, yeah, I do that with Italians too. I've seen him do it with Italians, like in a bar.
There was some portuñol going on there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I
Instead of Spanglish, portuñol.
In my case, I think I can understand better Latin Americans than Spanish people.
The accent's very different.
I don't know why, but I think it's because of the accent and the way they speak. But
the accent is very different.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable with Latin Americans. Okay, I think that we are coming to the end of this episode. We have a moment in our episodes that we call the cultural moment of Diversilíngua, you know, where we ask our guests any recommendations related to culture, like books or movies, you know. If you can give us 3 recommendations, I think that you can. Yeah, it's not obliged to give us recommendations related to language, you know. You can talk about other things or things that you like, you know, or even a place to visit, for example.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a really beautiful thing to end the podcast on. I think that's a great thing you guys have. For me, with books and movies, I always recommend to my students that they look for the types of things that they normally like, you know? So if you like mystery books, read mystery books. If you like thrillers, watch a thriller in English. But in general, I think books and movies, if you look for the classics of whatever culture it is, whether it's Spain or America or Brazil, you find those classic pieces of literature or movies that everyone has seen and that people make references to in their day-to-day lives. And that can help you quite a bit in just relating to the culture. If you analyze more than just the language, but how are people reacting about the situations? How do people relate to one another? What's going on in the atmosphere? So I think one of those like classic books that we always read, that every American has read, I would say, is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, which maybe, I'm trying to remember how difficult the like vocabulary and that stuff was, but I read it in middle school. So when I was maybe like 12, 13, so maybe it would be a more intermediate book for language learners, but it gives a really great perspective on during those times of segregation in the United States and how race plays its role in sort of our identity. And we're seeing those race issues come up again quite strongly now in this year, this crazy year of 2020, that it's a great way to...
Could you repeat the name of the book?
Oh, yes. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. So it's very beautiful. It's beautifully written and one of the most famous American classics, I would say. And along with that, also a book, which is more, not as heavy of a topic, but more of, it's just very fun, is called The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain.
Classic.
Yeah, a classic. So everyone's read that and has that sense of like adventure that comes from, you know, American children. It just shows a lot of culture. So maybe things when you read it, you know, the first time you don't get it, or it's like, why is this cool? Or why do people like to read this? But it says a lot about our culture. So making those observations culturally, not just linguistically, when you read can help a lot. And the same with movies. There are a lot of classic movies, but one like Forrest Gump, for example, that everyone has watched Forrest Gump, and people make jokes about Forrest Gump or like quote Forrest Gump in their day-to-day lives. So
it's wonderful.
If you haven't watched it in English, go watch it in English.
I love Forrest Gump. I had only one thing to complain about that movie. It is because he's too long. It is too long.
How long is it actually? It's been a while since I've seen it.
I think that it's more than 2.5 hours, I think.
Well, I think the best movies are always the longest ones, which I have a tendency to fall asleep during movies, so that's hard for me. But I have to have like a partner with me to keep me awake during a long movie. But
so to wrap that up, it is To Kill a Mockingbird. It's one of the books, and the other one,
The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
Oh, okay. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Okay, thank you.
Forrest Gump, right?
Yeah, and the movie, Forrest Gump.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay, thank you for being our guest today, Kayla. And this is your space to share your contact, your work, or if you have any other thing to share with our audience, with our listeners, and feel free to do it. And yeah, it was a wonderful conversation with you. I hope we can have more of this maybe in the future, because I think that we had a lot of things to talk, and we are so thankful for having you in our show.
Well, thank you guys. I'm very thankful as well. This has really been a blessing, and I feel very honored to have been invited to speak with you guys. We had so much to talk about. Like, I love these conversations. They're my favorite things to talk about. So for anyone who wants to join the English Without Borders group, you can find us just searching in Facebook groups, English Without Borders. And we accept everyone, and anyone can join into our free classes 3 times a week. Our YouTube channel is under the same name, English Without Borders. So you can find us there as well. I can share these links with Diego and with Renata. You guys can put them in. I don't know if you have links that you can share in your descriptions of podcasts so people can find it. Yeah, so I'll share that with you guys. And my personal social media, you can follow me if you want. I don't talk that much about I don't talk that much about language learning yet. We are going to make an Instagram for English Without Borders, but we don't have it going yet. But my personal Instagram is just Kayla Belush. It's just my name. The same as my website, just kaylabelush.com, where I sort of share my experiences about living abroad in Spain. So yeah, thanks. It's been an honor to be with you guys, and I love seeing the initiative that you have here. And I think it's one of the best ways for you guys to inspire other language learners is to show that you push yourselves to do these sorts of things in your non-native languages as well. You know, like that's really cool. So now one day I have to do a podcast in Spanish.
I can confess that sometimes I mispronounce some words, and because I'm a little bit anxious, but I'm training myself. Yeah, I'm training myself with those episodes, and I think that maybe I can overcome that.
Yeah, it's the best way we can improve in speaking is being this kind of situations, right? We expose ourselves, we talk to other people. So that's the only way, actively.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the reason why we record this episode, guys. And I hope that our listeners can share this episode with anyone that you think that will like this episode, that would like this episode. Maybe you can share with your family, with your friends. It would be good to have some suggestions for you, because I think that you guys can build our Diversilíngua podcast. Thank you for being here, Kayla, for being our guest. It was a pleasure to talk with you in English, and thank you, Renata, to stay with me in this episode.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It was online.
And thank you, Kayla, again. I had a lot of fun. And please, guys, make your comments on our social media about what you thought about this episode. It's been great to host. Okay. See you next time.
See you next time. Have a nice day, Kayla.
Bye. Bye, Diego. Bye, Renata. Thank you.
Bye-bye.